The sound of steak being sawed into submission isn't exactly what poets write about when they talk about anniversary dinners. But here we are, 15 years of marriage, and my wife Kina is attacking her porcelain plate like she's trying to dig through to China. I'm Wilder Sornel, and I used to think I was good at reading people. 15 years in forensic accounting for the IRS Criminal Division will teach you to spot lies, patterns, and the little tells that give away someone's true intentions. But apparently, I'd been looking at financial statements so long that I'd forgotten how to read my own wife. The dining room feels smaller tonight, even with the good china and the candles Kina insisted on lighting. She's checking her phone between bites, that little crease forming between her eyebrows that used to mean she was thinking about work. Now, I'm not so sure. Remember this? I slide an old photo across the table. Our honeymoon in Vermont, both of us grinning like idiots in front of some tourist waterfall. I'd found it while cleaning out my desk drawer earlier, tucked behind old tax documents like a forgotten receipt. Kina glances at it, barely pausing in her systematic destruction of the ribeye. Nice. Nice. 15 years condensed into one distracted syllable. Her phone buzzes again. The screen lights up her face with that familiar blue glow, and I catch the name before she can angle it away. Drew. The same Drew who's been texting her at odd hours for the past 3 months. The same Drew from her office who apparently has a lot of urgent HR emergencies that require immediate attention at 9:30 on a Tuesday night. Work? I ask, though we both know it's not really a question. Always. She doesn't look up from the screen, fingers dancing across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. The kind of efficiency that comes from having the same conversation over and over again. I take a sip of the wine I'd picked out specially for tonight, a bottle from the same vineyard we'd visited on our 5th anniversary, when we still believed in forever and thought mortgage payments were just something other couples worried about. The irony isn't lost on me that I'm drinking alone while my wife conducts her digital romance 3 feet away. The knife scrapes against porcelain again, and something about that sound, metal against ceramic, harsh and grating, makes my jaw clench. Maybe it's the wine, or maybe it's the way she's smiling at whatever Drew just sent her, but I find myself leaning back in my chair and really looking at my wife for the first time in months. Kina Vexler. She'd kept her maiden name, said it sounded more professional for someone in human resources. She's 38, ambitious in the way that used to excite me, and now just feels exhausting. Tonight she's wearing the black dress I'd bought her for Christmas, the one she claimed she loved but had never worn until tonight. For Drew, apparently. How is Drew these days? The question comes out more casual than I feel, but 15 years of interrogating tax evaders has taught me the value of seeming disinterested when you're anything but. She pauses, fork halfway to her mouth. He's fine. Why? Just curious. You mention him a lot lately. He's a colleague, Wilder. We work together. Right. And all those late nights at the office, those are work too? The fork clatters against her plate. Finally, I have her full attention. Her green eyes, the same ones that used to make me forget my own name, narrow slightly. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just making conversation. But we both know it's not nothing. The mortgage statement is sitting on the kitchen counter, overdue notice stamped in red across the top. The same mortgage that I've been paying alone for the past 3 months, while Kina's been spending her evenings working late and her weekends running errands that somehow never involve coming home with groceries or dry cleaning. She sets down her wine glass with more force than necessary. You know what your problem is, Wilder? You think everyone is running some kind of scam? Not everything is a criminal investigation? Maybe not. But some things are. The candles flicker between us, casting shadows that make her face look different somehow, harder. Like I'm seeing her clearly for the first time in months, maybe years. Drew understands me better than you ever did. The words hang in the air between us like smoke from blown-out candles. She says it quietly, almost thoughtfully, like she's been rehearsing the line and finally found the courage to deliver it. The knife stops scraping. The clock in the hallway ticks. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slams. I set down my wine glass and look at her. Really look at her. The woman I'd married 15 years ago, who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and steal fries from my plate and leave little notes in my lunch bag. The woman who'd cried when we'd bought this house, said it was everything she'd ever dreamed of. Then he can pay the mortgage, too. The words come out calm, matter of fact, like I'm discussing the weather or commenting on the wine. But inside, something fundamental shifts, a gear clicking into place after months of grinding against nothing. Keena blinks, clearly not expecting that response. Wilder, I didn't mean— No, you did mean it. I push back from the table, the chair legs scraping against hardwood. You meant every word. I walk to the kitchen, leaving her sitting there with her half-finished steak and her buzzing phone. The mortgage statement is where I left it, red letters glaring under the fluorescent light. 3 months behind. Not because we don't have the money, but because I stopped paying it the day I figured out where Keena's paychecks were really going. Drew Halden. I'd looked him up, of course. Corporate consultant, divorced twice, drives a leased BMW and rents a condo downtown that costs more than our mortgage. The kind of man who orders wine by pointing at the price rather than reading the label. I pull my wedding ring off my finger. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a simple gold band that suddenly feels heavier than it should. I set it down on top of the mortgage statement, metal against paper, and something about the finality of that gesture makes me smile. Footsteps in the hallway. Keena appears in the kitchen doorway, still holding her wine glass, looking uncertain for the first time tonight. Wilder, we need to talk about this. No, we don't. I'm already moving toward the stairs, toward the bedroom where I keep my old travel bag. We're done talking. You're being dramatic. Am I? I pause at the bottom of the stairs and turn back to her. Your boyfriend understands you better than your husband. Seems pretty clear to me. He's not my— She stops, catches herself, but it's too late. The denial dies on her lips, and we both know why. It takes me exactly 12 minutes to pack everything that matters. One suitcase, the same one I'd taken on business trips back when I still traveled for the IRS. Clothes, toiletries, the photo of my parents from my nightstand. Everything else, the furniture, the appliances, the accumulated debris of 15 years, belongs to this house. And this house belongs to the bank. Keena is waiting in the living room when I come back downstairs, arms crossed, trying to look defiant, but mostly just looking scared. Where are you going? Away. For how long? However long it takes. She follows me to the front door, wine glass forgotten somewhere behind us. Wilder, please, can't we just talk about this like adults? I pause with my hand on the doorknob. The house key is already off my ring, sitting on the hall table next to her purse and another pile of unpaid bills. You want to talk like adults? Here's some adult conversation. I know about the joint account. I know about the credit cards. I know about the weekend trips that weren't work conferences. Her face goes pale. How do you— I'm a forensic accountant, Keena. Following money trails is literally what I do for a living. Did. What? What you did for a living. Past tense. You're a contractor now, remember? You renovate bathrooms. She says it like an insult, like the fact that I'd left federal service to start my own business somehow makes me less than what I used to be. Less than Drew, probably, with his corporate consulting and his leased BMW. You're right, I say, shouldering my bag. I renovate bathrooms, but I still remember how to audit financial records. Funny how those skills transfer. I open the door, and the October air hits my face like a slap. Cold and clean and honest, in a way that the house hasn't felt in months. Wilder, wait! But I'm already walking toward my truck, gravel crunching under my feet. Behind me, I hear her calling my name, but I don't turn around. The engine starts on the first try, headlights cutting through the darkness of our driveway for what I already know will be the last time. In the rearview mirror, I can see her silhouette in the doorway, backlit by the warm glow of our dining room, where 2 plates of cold steak are still waiting on the table. She's holding her phone again, probably texting Drew, probably telling him about our conversation. Good. Let her tell him everything. Let her explain how her husband just walked away from 15 years of marriage and left her holding the mortgage statement. Let her see how much Drew understands when the bills start coming due and there's no one left to pay them. I drive through town slowly, past the closed shops and empty parking lots, past the bar where I used to meet colleagues for drinks after particularly brutal audit cases. The Anchor is still open, neon sign buzzing in the window, but I don't stop, not tonight. Instead, I drive to the extended stay hotel on the outskirts of town, the kind of place that rents by the week and doesn't ask too many questions. The desk clerk barely looks up from his magazine when I sign the register, just slides a key card across the counter and points toward the elevator. Room 237 is exactly what you'd expect from a place like this. Clean but impersonal, with furniture that's seen better decades and carpet that's trying its best to hide years of questionable stains. But it's quiet, and it's mine, and for the first time in months, I can breathe without feeling like I'm suffocating. I set my suitcase on the bed and pull out my phone. 17 missed calls from Kina and a string of text messages that start with confusion and escalate quickly to anger. I scroll through them without reading the details, just noting the progression from, "Where did you go?" to, "You're being ridiculous," to, "We need to talk now." The last message came in 5 minutes ago. "I'm sorry. Please come home." I stare at those 4 words for a long time, thinking about the woman who sent them. The woman who'd rather text an apology than say it to my face. The woman who's probably sitting in our living room right now, wondering how to explain to Drew that her husband just complicated their carefully planned affair. Then I block her number and turn off the phone. The sound of nothing is surprisingly loud. I wake up in the hotel room to absolute silence. No Kina running the hairdryer, no coffee maker gurgling to life, no morning news playing from the kitchen television. Just the hum of the heating unit and the distant rumble of traffic on Route 9. It's the first time in 15 years I've woken up without knowing exactly what my day is supposed to look like. My phone has been off since last night, but I can feel it there on the nightstand like a loaded weapon. 37 missed calls when I finally turn it on, and enough text messages to fill a small novel. I scroll through them over coffee from the lobby. Weak stuff that tastes like it was brewed sometime last week, but it's hot, and it's mine, and no one's asking me to share it. The messages follow a predictable pattern: confusion, anger, bargaining, more anger. Kina's emotional range on full display, compressed into 160-character bursts of desperation. The most recent one sent at 3:47 a.m. "The mortgage payment bounced. We need to talk." Of course it bounced. I'd moved my direct deposit to a new account 3 months ago, the day I'd finally confirmed what I'd suspected for weeks. The day I'd followed her to that restaurant downtown and watched her hold hands with Drew Halden across a table covered in roses and expensive wine. I'd been planning this moment ever since. The extended stay hotel has Wi-Fi that's almost fast enough to be useful, so I spend the morning doing what I do best, following the money. My laptop is one of the few things I'd grabbed from the house, along with the external drive that contains 15 years of financial records. Old habits from my IRS days: always keep backups, always document everything, always assume someone's lying to you. Kina thinks I'm just a bathroom contractor now, and I've let her think that. It's easier than explaining that leaving federal service doesn't mean you forget how to investigate fraud. If anything, it makes you better at it. Less bureaucracy, fewer rules, more creative freedom. I'd started watching our accounts 6 months ago, when the late nights and mysterious errands first began. Joint checking, joint savings, credit cards, even her personal account that she thought I didn't know about. 15 years of marriage means you learn each other's passwords. especially when your wife uses the same 4 variations for everything: her maiden name, her birth year, the street we live on, or some combination of the 3. The pattern had been subtle at first. Dinner charges at restaurants I'd never been to, gas purchases on the other side of town when she was supposed to be at work, ATM withdrawals in amounts just small enough to avoid triggering automatic alerts. Classic signs of someone funding a double life. But Drew Halden was more expensive than I'd initially calculated. I pull up the credit card statements on my laptop, cross-referencing dates and amounts with Keena's work schedule. The picture that emerges is of a woman systematically draining our joint resources to finance an affair with a man who apparently has very expensive tastes. Hotel rooms, restaurant bills, shopping trips to stores I'd never heard of. Even a weekend in Boston that she'd told me was a work conference. The conference was real. I'd checked. She just hadn't attended. My phone buzzes with another text from Keena. "Please call me. We can work this out." I set the phone aside and keep working. There's something therapeutic about spreadsheets, about reducing human behavior to columns of numbers and dates. It removes the emotion, strips away the lies and excuses and hurt feelings, and leaves only the facts. And the facts are telling a very clear story. A knock at the door interrupts my analysis. I'm not expecting anyone, and housekeeping isn't supposed to come until afternoon. Through the peephole, I can see a familiar figure. Malik Torres, my old partner from the IRS Criminal Division. He's holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the same crooked grin that used to drive our supervisors crazy. "Figured you might want some real coffee," he says when I open the door. "That lobby stuff tastes like it was filtered through a gym sock." Malik is one of those people who makes friends easily and keeps them forever. We'd worked together for 8 years before I'd left the IRS, and he'd been the best man at my wedding. If anyone was going to track me down at a cheap hotel, it would be him. "How did you find me?" I ask, accepting the coffee gratefully. "It's from the good place downtown, the one that charges $5 for what you can get at a gas station for 50 cents, but actually makes it worth the price. You always were predictable, Wilder. Remember that case in Springfield? You holed up in the exact same kind of place while we were tracking those shell companies." He settles into the room's single chair while I sit on the edge of the bed. Malik looks exactly the same as he did when we were chasing tax evaders together, slightly rumpled, perpetually amused, and sharp enough to cut glass when he needs to be. "So," he says, sipping his coffee, "want to tell me why Keena called me at 6 this morning, crying about how you've lost your mind and abandoned your marriage?" She said that? Among other things, also mentioned something about frozen accounts and bounced mortgage payments. Sounds like you've been busy. I show him the laptop screen, the spreadsheets and bank records and credit card statements that tell the story of my marriage's slow dissolution. Malik whistles low when he sees the totals. 15,000 in 3 months? On what? Drew Halden. Ever heard of him? Malik's expression shifts, the casual friendliness replaced by something sharper. Should I have? Corporate consultant, works with biotech companies, helps them navigate regulatory compliance, divorced twice, no kids, drives a BMW he can't afford, and lives in a condo that costs more than most people's salaries. Sounds like a real winner. How'd Keena meet him? Her company hired his firm for some project. Harassment training, ironically enough. Malik laughs, but there's no humor in it. You want me to run a background check? Already did. I pull up another file on my laptop, this one containing everything I'd been able to dig up on Drew Halden in the past 3 months. Clean criminal record, decent credit score, but there's something off about his employment history. Too many short-term contracts, too many companies that folded right after he finished working with them. Could be coincidence. Could be. Or could be something else entirely. I show Malik the pattern I'd identified. 7 different companies over the past 5 years, all small biotech firms, all of which had hired Drew's consulting group for various projects. and all of which had experienced significant financial difficulties within 6 months of his departure. "That's interesting," Malik says, leaning closer to the screen. "What kind of financial difficulties?" "Embezzlement, mostly. Internal fraud, missing funds, that sort of thing. Nothing that could be traced back to Drew directly, but the timing is suspicious." "You think he's running some kind of long-term con?" "I think Drew Halden is very good at identifying vulnerable targets and exploiting them. The question is whether Keena is just his latest victim or if she's actively helping him." Malik finishes his coffee and sets the cup on the nightstand. "What do you want to do about it?" "Nothing." "Nothing?" "Nothing illegal, anyway. I'm not going to interfere with their relationship or try to sabotage whatever they're planning. I'm just going to let it play out naturally. And if she loses the house, then she loses the house." Malik studies my face for a long moment. We'd worked together long enough that he knows when I'm holding something back. "There's more to this, isn't there?" I close the laptop and lean back against the headboard. "Remember what you taught me about financial investigations? Follow the money, but also follow the pattern. People are creatures of habit, especially when they think they're being clever." "Yeah, so? So I've been following Drew's pattern for 3 months, and if I'm right about what he's planning, Keena's about to learn some very expensive lessons about trust." My phone buzzes again. Another text from Keena, this one shorter. "Call me." I show the message to Malik, who shakes his head. "You're not going to answer?" "Nope." "She's your wife, Wilder." "She was my wife. Now she's Drew's problem." Malik stands up, straightening his jacket. "Well, this has been enlightening, but I should probably get back to work. Unlike some people, I still have a government job to maintain." "Thanks for the coffee." "Thanks for the entertainment. This is better than anything on television." He pauses at the door. "You sure you know what you're doing?" "I'm sure." "And you're okay with however this ends?" I think about that question for a moment, about the woman I'd married 15 years ago and the stranger she'd become, about the house we'd bought together and the mortgage payments I'd been making alone, about Drew Halden and his expensive tastes and his pattern of leaving financial wreckage in his wake. "I'm okay with it ending," I say finally. Malik nods and leaves, taking his empty coffee cup with him. I'm alone again with my laptop and my spreadsheets and the growing certainty that Keena's story with Drew is about to reach its inevitable conclusion. I spend the rest of the day working on a legitimate project, a bathroom renovation for a client in Brookfield who wants marble countertops and heated floors. Normal work for normal people with normal problems. It's satisfying in a way that financial investigations never were, creating something instead of just documenting someone else's destruction. But I can't stop thinking about the pattern I'd identified, about Drew's history of short-term relationships with women who had access to money or resources he needed, about the way Keena had looked at her phone during dinner last night, like she was communicating with someone who understood her better than her husband ever could. By evening, I've made a decision. I drive back into town, past the house I'd shared with Keena for 15 years. The lights are on in the kitchen, and I can see her silhouette moving around inside, probably calling Drew, probably trying to figure out how to explain why her husband just disappeared and took his income with him. I don't stop. Instead, I drive to the office building where Drew's consulting firm rents space on the 3rd floor. His BMW is in the parking lot, exactly where I expected it to be. Leased, not owned, according to the records I'd pulled. Just like the condo, just like most of his life. I sit in my truck for an hour, watching the building, thinking about patterns and predictions and the way people reveal themselves when they think no one's paying attention. Drew's office light stays on until almost 9 o'clock, which seems late for a consultant who supposedly specializes in regulatory compliance. When he finally emerges, he's not alone. A woman follows him out of the building, someone I don't recognize but who fits a familiar pattern. Well-dressed, probably married, definitely not Keena. They stand close together in the parking lot, talking in the intimate way that people do when they're sharing secrets. Then Drew gets in his BMW, and the woman gets in a Mercedes with a wedding ring clearly visible on her left hand. I start my truck and follow the Mercedes. 3 weeks into my new life at the extended stay hotel, I've developed a routine. Coffee from the lobby at 6 a.m., check the financial news while the rest of the world wakes up, then drive to whatever job site needs my attention. Today, it's the Brookfield bathroom, where Mrs. Patterson wants me to explain why marble costs more than ceramic and why quality work takes longer than the estimates she found online. It's honest work, and there's something satisfying about solving problems that have actual solutions. Crooked tiles can be fixed. Leaky pipes can be replaced. Broken marriages, apparently, are more complicated. My phone has been buzzing all morning with calls from Kina, but I let them go to voicemail. I'll listen to them eventually, when I'm ready to hear whatever story she's constructed to explain away the past 3 months. For now, I'm content to let her wonder where I am and what I'm planning. The answer, of course, is nothing. I'm not planning anything at all. I'm just waiting for Drew Halden to do what Drew Halden does, based on the pattern I've identified from his previous relationships. And based on what I saw in that parking lot 3 nights ago, he's right on schedule. Mrs. Patterson is explaining her vision for heated towel racks when my phone rings. Not Kina this time, but Malik. "You need to see something," he says without preamble. "I'm working." "This is more important than bathroom tiles. Meet me at the Anchor in an hour." The Anchor is the kind of bar that survives by serving decent food and staying out of everyone's business. It's where cops go to complain about their cases and where contractors go to complain about their clients. The perfect place for a conversation you don't want overheard. Malik is already there when I arrive, sitting in a corner booth with a manila folder and 2 beers. He slides one across the table as I sit down. "Remember how you asked me not to run a background check on Drew Halden?" "I remember asking you not to do anything illegal." "Right. Well, I didn't do anything illegal, but I did make some phone calls to people who might have worked with him in the past." Malik opens the folder and spreads out a collection of photographs and documents. "Meet Patricia Henley, Rebecca Santos, and Linda Kowalski. 3 women who had very intimate relationships with Drew Halden over the past 2 years. The photographs show women in their 30s and 40s, all attractive, all wearing wedding rings in at least some of the pictures. I study their faces, looking for common characteristics beyond the obvious. "Let me guess," I say. "All married, all with access to joint financial accounts, all convinced that Drew understood them better than their husbands did." "You're good at this." Patricia was married to a dentist. Rebecca to an engineer. Linda to a small business owner. All 3 relationships followed the same pattern: 6 months of romance, increasing financial requests, then Drew disappears right before everything falls apart. How much did they lose? Patricia, $23,000. Rebecca, $18,000. Linda, $31,000, plus her house when her husband found out and filed for divorce. I sip my beer and think about Kina, sitting in our kitchen right now, probably trying to figure out how to make the mortgage payment without my income. What happened to Drew after each relationship ended? That's the interesting part. He always moves to a new city, changes his business registration, sometimes even uses a slightly different name. Drew Halden becomes Andrew Halden becomes Dr. Halden. Same person, same pattern, just different enough to avoid detection if someone comes looking. Malik pulls out another document, this one a credit report. But people like Drew get sloppy eventually. They start believing their own stories, thinking they're smarter than everyone else, and that's when they make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind that leave paper trails. Drew's been using the same social security number for all his business registrations, which means I can track his movements over the past 5 years. 7 cities, 12 different women, and approximately $200,000 in financial damage. I study the credit report, noting the addresses and dates. He's escalating. That's what I thought too. The amounts are getting larger, the relationships are getting shorter, and he's taking bigger risks. Patricia Henley's husband was a dentist with a small practice. Rebecca Santos's husband was an engineer with a stable job. But Linda Kowalski's husband owned 3 auto repair shops and had connections to some very unforgiving people. What happened? Drew disappeared in the middle of the night, left Linda with $31,000 in credit card charges and a very angry husband who knew how to find people who didn't want to be found. Malik closes the folder and leans back in his seat. The point is, Drew's pattern is getting more aggressive, and he's running out of places to hide, which means whatever he's planning with Keena, it's probably going to be his biggest score yet. I finish my beer and signal for another. The anchor is filling up with the after-work crowd, contractors and office workers and people whose biggest problem is deciding what to have for dinner. Simple problems with simple solutions. There's something else, Malik says, lowering his voice. I did some checking on Keena's company, the biotech firm where she works in HR. And? They're in the middle of a major acquisition. Some pharmaceutical company from Switzerland is buying them out, and the deal is supposed to close next month. All the employees are getting retention bonuses, stock options, the whole package. The pieces click together in my mind like tumblers in a lock. How much? For someone in Keena's position, probably 200,000, maybe more. I lean back in the booth, feeling something that might be admiration for Drew's planning. He's not just running a romance scam, he's running a long-term financial operation. That's what I think too. The timing is too perfect to be coincidental. He starts working with her company 6 months ago, right when the acquisition talks would have been starting. He cultivates a relationship with someone in HR who would have access to information about the deal. And now he's positioned to disappear with her retention bonus right before everything falls apart. Except I'm not there to cover the mortgage payments anymore. Right. Which means his timeline just accelerated whether he wanted it to or not. My phone buzzes with another call from Keena. This time, I answer. Wilder, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Her voice sounds different, strained, like she's been crying or not sleeping or both. In the background, I can hear traffic noise, which means she's calling from her car instead of the house. What do you need, Keena? I need you to come home. We need to talk about the mortgage, about everything. I made a mistake, and I want to fix it. What kind of mistake? There's a long pause, and I can hear her breathing on the other end of the line. The kind that costs money we don't have. How much money? Wilder, please. Can we do this in person? I'm sitting outside the house right now, and there's a notice on the door from the bank. They're starting foreclosure proceedings. I look at Malik, who's been listening to my side of the conversation. He shrugs, as if to say it's my choice. Where's Drew? I ask. Another pause, longer this time. I don't know. You don't know? Or you don't want to tell me? I don't know, Wilder. He was supposed to meet me 3 days ago, and he never showed up. He's not answering his phone, and his office says he's out of town on business. What kind of business? I don't know that either. I can hear the desperation in her voice now, the growing realization that whatever story she'd been telling herself about Drew and their relationship might not be as solid as she'd believed. Keena, I need you to listen to me very carefully. How much money do you have access to right now? What do you mean? I mean cash, checking account, savings, credit cards. How much could you put your hands on if you needed it today? I'm not sure. Maybe a few thousand? Why? Because Drew Halden is a professional con artist, and you've been his target for the past 6 months. And if I'm right about what he's planning, you're about to lose a lot more than just the house. The line goes quiet except for the sound of traffic and Keena's breathing. When she speaks again, her voice is barely a whisper. What are you talking about? Check your accounts, Keena. All of them. Check your credit cards, your personal savings, anything that Drew might have had access to. Check them right now. I can hear her fumbling with her phone, probably switching to her banking app. Malik is watching me with interest, like he's witnessing a particularly complex chess game reach its endgame. "Oh God," Kina whispers. "Oh God, Wilder, it's gone. It's all gone." "How much?" 43,000. The retention bonus, the savings account, even the emergency fund. When did he? Probably yesterday. Maybe the day before. Right around the time he stopped answering your calls. She starts crying then, big gasping sobs that make her words almost unintelligible. "I'm so sorry, Wilder. I'm so sorry. I thought he loved me." "I know you did. Can you come home? Please? I know I don't deserve it, but I don't know what else to do." I look around the anchor, at the contractors and office workers and people with simple problems. At Malik, who's waiting to see what kind of man I really am underneath all the spreadsheets and financial analysis. "No," I say finally. "I can't come home. Wilder, please. Because it's not my home anymore, Kina. You made that clear 3 weeks ago when you told me that Drew understood you better than I ever did. You wanted him to understand you? Congratulations. Now you know exactly how well he understands you." I hang up before she can respond and turn off the phone. Malik raises his beer in a mock toast. That was cold. That was honest. Think she'll figure out how to save the house? I consider the question seriously. Kina is smart, capable, and resourceful when she needs to be. But she's also just lost $43,000 to a man who's probably already in another state, setting up his next operation. The mortgage is 3 months behind, and foreclosure proceedings have already started. "No," I say finally. "I don't think she will." "And you're okay with that?" "I'm okay with the consequences of her choices." Malik finishes his beer and stands up. "Well, this has been educational. But I should get home to my wife, who thankfully finds me more interesting than corporate consultants with criminal tendencies. Thanks for the information. Thanks for the entertainment. Let me know how this ends." He leaves me alone in the booth with the manila folder and the photographs of Drew's previous victims. 3 women who'd believed in a man who understood them better than their husbands did. 3 women who'd learned expensive lessons about trust and patterns and the difference between love and manipulation. I finish my beer and drive back to the extended stay hotel, where room 237 is exactly as I left it. Clean, quiet, and mine. I order Chinese takeout and spend the evening working on estimates for new jobs, planning bathroom renovations and kitchen upgrades for people who pay their bills and honor their commitments. Outside, it starts to rain, and I think about Kina sitting in her car outside the house we used to share, reading foreclosure notices and trying to figure out how everything went wrong so quickly. But I don't think about it for very long. The rain has been falling for 3 days straight, the kind of persistent October drizzle that makes everything look gray and defeated. I'm finishing up the tile work in Mrs. Patterson's bathroom when my phone rings. Not Kina this time. I blocked her number 2 days ago after the 15th voicemail. But Malik. "You need to turn on Channel 8, he says without preamble. "I'm working. Trust me on this one. Channel 8, right now." Mrs. Patterson has a small television in her bedroom, and she's happy to let me borrow it when I explain that it might be related to a case I used to work on. The local news is running a story about financial fraud, and there's a familiar face on the screen. Drew Halden, looking significantly less polished than usual in what appears to be a police booking photo. Corporate consultant Drew Halden was arrested yesterday in Tucson, Arizona, on charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny, the reporter is saying. FBI investigators say Halden operated a sophisticated romance scam targeting married women across multiple states, stealing an estimated $400,000 over the past 3 years. The screen switches to footage of Drew being led away in handcuffs, looking like a man who'd finally run out of places to hide. Mrs. Patterson watches with interest. "Isn't that terrible?" she says. You can't trust anyone these days. No, I agree. You really can't. I finish the tile work and clean up my tools while the news moves on to other stories. Traffic accidents, city council meetings, high school football scores, normal problems for normal people. But I keep thinking about Drew in handcuffs and about the timing of his arrest. My phone buzzes with a text from Malik. Check your email. The email contains a link to the FBI press release about Drew's arrest, along with a note. Thought you might find this interesting. The complaint mentions an anonymous tip that provided detailed financial records documenting the defendant's pattern of fraud. Someone did their homework. I read through the press release carefully. 7 victims across 4 states, total losses exceeding $400,000, evidence including bank records, credit card statements, and communications documenting a pattern of predatory behavior targeting married women with access to joint financial accounts. The kind of evidence that would take months to compile unless someone had already been tracking Drew's activities. The kind of evidence that a forensic accountant might have assembled while investigating his own wife's affair. I call Malik back. Did you submit that tip? I ask. Me? I'm just a federal employee who occasionally makes phone calls to old colleagues. I don't know anything about anonymous tips or detailed financial analysis. Malik. Okay, maybe I know a little something about it, but only because someone I know spent 3 months documenting Drew's pattern of fraud and happened to have all the evidence already organized in a very convenient spreadsheet format. You used my research? I used publicly available information that happened to be compiled by someone with excellent analytical skills and a personal interest in seeing justice done. I lean back against Mrs. Patterson's bathroom wall, thinking about the implications. How long will he be in prison? Federal wire fraud? Multiple victims? Pattern of predatory behavior? If he's convicted on all counts, probably 8 to 10 years. And the money he stole? Gone. Spent, hidden, or transferred to accounts that will take years to trace. The victims might recover 10 cents on the dollar if they're lucky. Which means Keena's $43,000 is gone forever, along with any chance of saving the house. I should feel something about that. Guilt, regret, maybe even satisfaction. But mostly, I just feel tired. There's something else, Malik says. The FBI wants to interview Keena as a potential victim. They'll probably contact her in the next day or 2. Will she be in any legal trouble? Probably not. She was a victim, not an accomplice. But they'll want to document her losses and get her statement about how Drew operated. I thank Malik and hang up, then spend the rest of the afternoon finishing Mrs. Patterson's bathroom. Marble countertops, heated floors, and towel racks that will warm her towels to exactly the right temperature every morning for the next 20 years. Simple problems with permanent solutions. That evening, I drive past the house I used to share with Keena. There's a foreclosure notice nailed to the front door, official and final, and Keena's car isn't in the driveway. The windows are dark, and the whole place has that abandoned look that houses get when no one's taking care of them anymore. I park across the street and sit in my truck for a while, thinking about the 15 years I'd lived in that house. The morning coffee in the kitchen, the Sunday afternoons reading the paper in the living room, the quiet evenings when we'd actually talk to each other instead of staring at our phones. All of it gone now, reduced to a foreclosure notice and a pile of unpaid bills. My phone rings. Unknown number. But I answer anyway. Wilder? It's me. Keena's voice, calling from someone else's phone. She sounds exhausted, like she hasn't slept in days. How did you get this number? I called your office. Your secretary said you were working late. What do you want, Keena? I wanted to tell you that you were right. About Drew, about everything. The FBI came to see me today. I heard. You heard? It was on the news. There's a long pause, and I can hear voices in the background. She's somewhere public, maybe a restaurant or a coffee shop. I'm staying with my sister in Springfield, she says finally. The bank changed the locks on the house yesterday. I'm sorry. Are you? Really? I think about that question seriously. Am I sorry that my wife lost her house because she chose to trust a con artist over her husband? Am I sorry that 15 years of marriage ended with foreclosure notices and FBI interviews? I'm sorry it ended this way, I say finally. But I'm not sorry it ended. The FBI agent said someone provided them with detailed financial records about Drew's previous victims, someone who'd been tracking his activities for months. That was smart of them. Was it you, Wilder? I watch the rain streak down my windshield, distorting the view of the house I used to call home. Does it matter? It matters to me. Why? Because I need to know if my husband spent 3 months planning my destruction, or if he just walked away and let it happen naturally. It's a fair question, and she deserves an honest answer. I documented Drew's pattern because I wanted to understand what was happening to my marriage. I shared that information with the appropriate authorities because he was committing federal crimes. What happened to you was a consequence of your choices, not my planning. But you knew what would happen. I knew what Drew was, yes. I tried to warn you, but you'd already decided that he understood you better than I did. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Another long pause. When she speaks again, her voice is barely audible. I lost everything, Wilder. The house, the money, my job. The company rescinded my retention bonus when they found out I was involved with someone who was under FBI investigation. I have nothing left. You have your sister. For now, but I can't stay here forever. What do you want me to say, Keena? That I'll take you back? That we can start over and pretend the last 6 months never happened? I want you to say that 15 years of marriage meant something to you. I close my eyes and think about 15 years of shared meals and joint bank accounts and mortgage payments. About the woman I'd married who used to laugh at my jokes and leave notes in my lunch bag. About the stranger who'd told me that another man understood her better than I did. It did mean something, I say. Past tense. Wilder, I have to go, Keena. Take care of yourself. I hang up and turn off the phone, then sit in the truck for another hour, watching the rain fall on the house that used to be mine. Eventually, a police car drives by slowly, and the officer waves when he recognizes my truck. Small-town courtesy, checking on someone who might be having car trouble. I wave back and start the engine. Time to go home to room 237, where the coffee is terrible, but the rent is paid and no one's asking me to understand them better than anyone else ever has. The extended stay hotel looks exactly the same as it did 3 weeks ago, but somehow it feels more like home than the house I'd shared with Keena for 15 years. Maybe that's what happens when you stop trying to be someone else's solution and start being comfortable with your own problems. I order pizza and spend the evening working on estimates for new jobs. A kitchen renovation in Westfield, a bathroom upgrade in Northampton, a whole house project in Amherst for a couple who've been married for 30 years and still hold hands when they walk through their rooms together. Simple problems with honest solutions, paid for by people who honor their commitments and keep their promises. Outside, the rain keeps falling, washing away whatever's left of October and preparing the ground for whatever comes next. November arrives with the kind of cold that makes you remember why people invented central heating. I've been living at the extended stay hotel for 6 weeks now, and the routine has become comfortable in a way that surprises me. Coffee from the lobby, check the weather, drive to whatever job needs my attention. Today, it's the kitchen renovation in Westfield, where Mr. and Mrs. Chen want granite countertops and a breakfast bar where they can drink coffee together every morning for the next 30 years. It's the kind of project I've come to prefer. Straightforward work for people who know what they want and have realistic expectations about time and cost. No hidden agendas, no secret affairs, no federal investigations. Just honest work for honest pay. My phone has been quiet for the past week. No calls from Keena, no updates from Malik, no drama beyond the usual contractor challenges of getting permits and coordinating subcontractors. I'd started to think that maybe the worst was over, that everyone had moved on to whatever comes after marriage's end and con artists get arrested. I should have known better. The call comes at lunchtime, while I'm sitting in my truck eating a sandwich and reviewing the afternoon's work schedule. Unknown number again, but this time it's not Kina. Mr. Sornel, this is Agent Patricia Martinez with the FBI. I was wondering if you might have some time to talk. I set down my sandwich and think about how to respond. What about? The Drew Halden case. We understand you were married to one of the victims, and we're hoping you might be able to provide some additional context about his methods. I'm divorced now. Yes, we're aware of that. Would this afternoon be convenient? I could meet you wherever works best for you. I agree to meet her at the Anchor at 4 o'clock, figuring that a public place with good coffee and neutral territory might be the safest option. Agent Martinez turns out to be a woman in her 40s with the kind of professional competence that makes you understand why people become federal agents. She orders coffee and gets straight to the point. We're building a comprehensive case against Mr. Halden, and we're trying to understand exactly how he operated. Your ex-wife has been very helpful, but we think you might have a different perspective on his methods. What kind of perspective? The perspective of someone who was watching from the outside while it was happening. Someone who might have noticed patterns that the victims themselves missed. She opens a folder and spreads out photographs of Drew's other victims, the same ones Malik had shown me weeks earlier. We know you have a background in forensic accounting, and we know you were the source of some very detailed financial analysis that helped us identify other victims and build our case. I provided publicly available information to appropriate authorities. You provided 3 months of detailed surveillance and financial analysis that documented a complex criminal enterprise. That's not something most people would have the skills or patience to compile. Agent Martinez pulls out another document, this one a timeline of Drew's activities over the past year. What we're trying to understand is how he identified and targeted his victims. All of these women had certain characteristics in common, but we're not sure how he would have known that before he approached them. I study the timeline, noting the dates and locations. He wasn't just randomly targeting married women. He was specifically targeting women who worked for companies that were going through major financial transitions. What do you mean? Look at the pattern. Patricia Henley worked for a dental practice that was being sold to a corporate chain. Rebecca Santos worked for an engineering firm that had just landed a major government contract. Linda Kowalski's husband owned auto repair shops that were expanding rapidly. Agent Martinez follows my logic, making notes as I talk. And your ex-wife? Biotech company in the middle of a major acquisition. All the employees were getting retention bonuses and stock options. So he was targeting women who would have access to sudden windfalls of money. More than that, he was targeting women who would have access to information about those windfalls before they became public knowledge. Someone in HR would know about retention bonuses months before they were distributed. Someone married to a business owner would know about expansion plans before they were announced. Agent Martinez closes her folder and leans back in her chair. That suggests a level of sophistication we hadn't fully appreciated. He wasn't just running romance scams, he was running insider trading operations. Have you figured out how he identified these women in the first place? That's what we're working on. His consulting business gave him access to a lot of companies, but we're not sure how he narrowed down his targets. I think about Drew's pattern, about the way he'd approached Kina through her company's harassment training program. What if he wasn't narrowing down his targets? What if he was creating opportunities to meet multiple potential victims and then selecting the most promising ones? Explain. His consulting business specialized in regulatory compliance and HR training. That would give him access to employee records, organizational charts, information about who was married, who had access to financial information, who might be vulnerable to manipulation. Agent Martinez makes more notes. You think he was using his legitimate business as a cover for identifying potential victims? I think Drew Halden was very good at recognizing opportunities and exploiting them. The question is whether anyone else was helping him. What do you mean? I hesitate, thinking about the implications of what I'm about to suggest. 7 victims over 3 years, all targeted with surgical precision, all approached at exactly the right moment in their company's financial cycles. That's not luck or even skill. That's inside information. You think he had an accomplice? I think someone was providing him with advance intelligence about which companies were going through major financial transitions and which employees would have access to the money. Agent Martinez closes her notebook and finishes her coffee. That's a very interesting theory, Mr. Sornel. We'll definitely look into it. She leaves me sitting in the anchor with a half-finished sandwich and a growing certainty that Drew Halden's operation was more sophisticated than anyone had realized. Not just a romance scam, but a coordinated financial intelligence operation targeting women with access to corporate insider information. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the old mill on River Road at 8 p.m. Come alone. K. Kina, using someone else's phone again. The old mill is an abandoned textile factory on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where people go to have conversations they don't want overheard. I consider ignoring the message, but something about the tone makes me curious. I finish the Chen's kitchen work early and drive to the mill as the sun is setting. Kina's car is already there, parked behind the main building where it can't be seen from the road. She's sitting on the hood, wearing a heavy coat and looking like she's lost weight since the last time I saw her. "Thank you for coming," she says when I get out of my truck. "What do you want, Kina?" "I want to show you something I found when I was cleaning out my office." She hands me a manila envelope containing what appears to be a list of names and companies. I recognize some of them from Agent Martinez's files: the dental practice where Patricia Henley worked, the engineering firm where Rebecca Santos was employed, the auto repair business owned by Linda Kowalski's husband. "Where did you get this?" "It was in Drew's briefcase. He left it in my car the last time I saw him, and I forgot about it until yesterday." I study the list more carefully. Next to each company name is a date, an employee name, and what appears to be financial information: acquisition amounts, contract values, expansion budgets. "Kena, this is evidence of a federal crime. You need to give this to the FBI." "I will, but I wanted you to see it first, because there's something else." She points to the bottom of the page, where there's a signature I don't recognize and a company logo for something called Strategic Information Services. I looked up that company. It's a business intelligence firm that specializes in corporate due diligence and competitive analysis. So they have contracts with all the companies on this list. They were hired to provide background checks and financial analysis during the acquisition and expansion processes. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Someone at Strategic Information Services was feeding Drew inside information about which companies were going through major financial transitions, and which employees would have access to the money. "How long have you known about this?" "I figured it out yesterday, after the FBI agent asked me about how Drew might have known about my retention bonus before it was announced." I fold the papers and put them back in the envelope. "This changes everything, Kina. This isn't just romance fraud. This is corporate espionage." "I know. The FBI needs to see this immediately." "I know that too." She slides down from the hood of her car and stands facing me in the growing darkness. "But I wanted to give it to you first because you were right about everything. About Drew, about what he was doing, about what would happen if I trusted him. Being right doesn't make me feel any better about what happened. I'm not asking you to feel better about it. I'm asking you to understand that I know I made a mistake. A terrible, expensive mistake that cost me everything. What do you want me to say?" "I want you to say that you'll give this to the FBI for me, because I don't think I can face another interview right now." I look at the envelope in my hands, thinking about Drew Halden in his federal holding cell and the other victims who lost everything to his operation. About the sophisticated intelligence network that made his crimes possible, and the people who are still out there, probably targeting new victims. I'll give it to them, I say finally. Thank you. She gets back in her car and starts the engine, then rolls down the window. Wilder? For what it's worth, I really am sorry. About everything. I know you are. Do you think there's any chance we could ever… No, I say, not unkindly. I don't think there is. She nods and drives away, leaving me standing in the parking lot of an abandoned mill with evidence of a federal conspiracy in my hands. I call Agent Martinez from my truck and arrange to meet her at the FBI field office in Springfield first thing in the morning. Then I drive back to the extended stay hotel, where room 237 is exactly as I left it. Clean, quiet, and mine. I order Chinese takeout and spend the evening thinking about patterns and predictions and the way people reveal themselves when they think no one's paying attention. Outside, the first snow of the season begins to fall, covering everything in a clean white blanket that makes the world look new again. The FBI field office in Springfield looks exactly like you'd expect a federal building to look. Gray concrete, tight security, and the kind of institutional lighting that makes everyone appear slightly unwell. Agent Martinez meets me in the lobby at 8 a.m. sharp, and we spend the next 2 hours going through Keena's documents with a team of investigators who specialize in white-collar crime. This is significant, Agent Martinez says, studying the list of companies and dates. If we can prove that Strategic Information Services was providing insider information to facilitate these crimes, we're looking at a much larger conspiracy. How much larger? Potentially dozens of victims across multiple states. This kind of operation doesn't happen in isolation. There are probably other people like Drew working the same system. She hands the documents to another agent, who immediately starts making copies and entering information into a computer database. We'll need you to be available for follow-up questions, but this gives us everything we need to expand the investigation. What about Keena? What about her? Will she face any charges for not reporting this earlier? Agent Martinez considers the question. She was a victim who provided evidence as soon as she understood its significance. That's not typically something we prosecute. I drive back to Westfield feeling like I've done my civic duty, but also strangely empty. The Chen's kitchen is coming together nicely, granite countertops installed, breakfast bar taking shape, everything on schedule and under budget. The kind of project that makes clients happy and generates referrals for future work. Mrs. Chen brings me coffee around 10 o'clock and asks about my weekend plans. It's a simple question that makes me realize I don't have any. For 15 years, weekends meant shared meals and household projects and the comfortable routine of married life. Now they just mean 2 days without work to distract me from the silence. Probably just catch up on paperwork, I tell her. You should get out more, she says with the kind of maternal concern that makes me understand why her husband has been happy for 30 years. A nice man like you shouldn't spend all his time alone. I thank her for the coffee and the advice, then spend the rest of the morning installing cabinet hardware and thinking about what comes next. The hotel room is comfortable, but it's not a permanent solution. The work is steady, but I need to think about expanding the business if I want to build something lasting. The divorce will be final soon, which means I'll need to make decisions about where to live and how to structure my life going forward. Simple problems with practical solutions, the kind I've always been good at solving. My phone rings during lunch. Malik, calling from his office. Heard you had an interesting morning with the FBI, he says. Word travels fast. Agent Martinez called to thank me for connecting her with someone who understands financial investigations. Apparently, your ex-wife found some very useful documents. Apparently. She also mentioned that Strategic Information Services has contracts with about 40 companies across New England, all of them going through major financial transitions in the past 3 years. I set down my sandwich and think about the implications. How many potential victims are we talking about? Conservative estimate? Maybe 50 or 60 women who fit Drew's target profile. But the FBI thinks the actual number could be much higher. Jesus. Gets better. They arrested 2 more people this morning, a data analyst at Strategic Information Services and another consultant who was working the same scam in Connecticut. Turns out Drew was just one piece of a much larger operation. I finish my lunch while Malik fills me in on the details. A coordinated network of romance scammers using corporate intelligence to target women with access to insider financial information. Millions of dollars stolen over the past 5 years, dozens of marriages destroyed, entire families bankrupted by people who understood exactly how to exploit trust and intimacy for profit. What happens now? I ask. Now the FBI spends the next year building cases against everyone involved, and you go back to installing bathroom tiles for people who pay their bills on time. Could be worse. Could be a lot worse. Speaking of which, how are you holding up? It's a fair question. 6 weeks ago, my marriage ended, my wife lost everything to a federal criminal, and I moved into a hotel room with 1 suitcase and a laptop full of financial records. By most measures, my life has been completely disrupted. But sitting in my truck outside the Chen's house, eating a sandwich and talking to my oldest friend about bringing down a criminal conspiracy, I realize that I feel better than I have in months. Clearer, more focused, more like the person I used to be before I started spending all my energy trying to understand why my marriage was falling apart. I'm doing okay, I tell Malik. Better than okay, actually. Good, because I've got some news that might interest you. What kind of news? The kind that involves a certain house going up for auction next week, and a certain forensic accountant who might have enough cash saved up to make a competitive bid. I think about the house I'd shared with Keena for 15 years, about the mortgage payments I'd been making alone for the past 3 months before I walked away, about the foreclosure notice nailed to the front door and the dark windows that made the whole place look abandoned. How much? Probably 60 or 70% of what you originally paid for it. The bank just wants to recover their losses and move on. And you think I should buy back my own house? I think you should consider it. The market's good, the location is solid, and you know exactly what kind of work it needs. Could be a smart investment. Or it could be a terrible idea that keeps me tied to the worst period of my life. Could be that too. But maybe it's time to stop thinking about it as the place where your marriage ended and start thinking about it as the place where your new life begins. I spend the afternoon thinking about Malik's suggestion while I finish the cabinet installation. The Chen's kitchen is almost complete now, just a few final details left before they can start making coffee together at their new breakfast bar every morning for the next 30 years. Simple happiness built on honest work and mutual respect. By 5 o'clock, I've made my decision. The bank auction is held the following Tuesday in a conference room that smells like stale coffee and broken dreams. About 20 people show up, mostly investors looking for rental properties and house flippers, hoping to find undervalued assets. I sit in the back row wearing my best contractor clothes and trying to look like someone who belongs there. The auctioneer is a thin man with the kind of practiced enthusiasm that comes from selling other people's disasters for a living. He runs through the standard disclaimers about property condition and buyer responsibility, then opens the bidding at $40,000. The price climbs quickly to $55,000, then $60,000, then stalls as the serious bidders start calculating renovation costs and potential profits. I wait until it hits $68,000 before raising my hand for the first time. $70,000, I say, loud enough for everyone to hear. A few heads turn in my direction, but nobody else raises their hand. The auctioneer counts down from 10, bangs his gavel, and suddenly I own the house where I used to live with my ex-wife. The paperwork takes an hour, but by noon, I'm standing in the driveway of my new old house, with a set of keys and a cashier's check for $70,000. The foreclosure notice is still nailed to the front door, but now it's just a piece of paper documenting someone else's mistake. I walk through the empty rooms slowly, noting the work that needs to be done. New paint throughout, refinish the hardwood floors, update the kitchen appliances, maybe add a bathroom upstairs. 6 months of work, maybe 8 if I take my time and do everything right. The dining room still has scuff marks on the wall where Keena's chair used to sit. The kitchen counter still has a ring stain from the mortgage statement where I'd left my wedding ring 6 weeks ago. Small reminders of a life that used to exist here, now reduced to cosmetic damage that can be fixed with the right tools and enough patience. My phone buzzes with a text from Malik. "How did it go?" "I bought a house," I text back. "Your house?" "My house." I spend the rest of the afternoon measuring rooms and making lists of materials I'll need to order. By evening, I have a comprehensive renovation plan that will take 6 months and cost about $30,000 in materials and subcontractor fees. A solid investment in a property I know intimately, in a neighborhood where I've lived for 15 years. But more than that, it feels like the right kind of project for this moment in my life, taking something that's been damaged and making it better than it was before, starting with good bones and building something that will last. I drive back to the extended stay hotel for what I know will be one of the last times. Room 237 has been home for 6 weeks, but it was always meant to be temporary. A place to figure out what comes next, not a place to stay forever. I order pizza and spend the evening working on renovation schedules and contractor estimates. Outside, the November wind rattles the windows, but inside it's warm and quiet and mine. Tomorrow I'll start the work of turning a foreclosed house back into a home. Not the same home it used to be, but something new and better. Something built on honest work and realistic expectations, and the understanding that the best way to move forward is to start with a solid foundation. The mortgage statement is probably still sitting on the kitchen counter where I left it 6 weeks ago, but now it's just a piece of paper documenting a problem that's already been solved. Cold equity, paid in cash, with no monthly payments and no joint accounts and no one asking me to understand them better than anyone else ever has. Simple problems with permanent solutions, exactly the way I like them. Outside, the first real snow of winter begins to fall, covering everything in a clean white blanket that makes the world look ready for whatever comes next.